2018 is now behind us, of course, but there were so many great games over that year, and we just can't stop talking about them. And one thing we like to do every year is point out the craziest little details that developers included in games. So here's 10 of our favorites from 2018 games. Starting off with number 10, let's talk about WWE 2K19, a game that was far from perfect. If you watched our Before You Buy, we have our issues with the games. But that said, 2K19 continues the trend of having some really gross and obscene levels of detail, specifically in the level of detail in the tattoos of the game's superstars. So if you want to see an incredibly detailed version of a sword tattooed on Brock Lesnar's big old body, that said, it's especially noticeable on models of wrestlers whose tattoos have more coverage and are just more pronounced. For example, looking at Aleister Black, you can see the incredible amount of detail, especially in his arm and back pieces, and it's something you don't really see in a lot of games. Usually you get them kind of slapping them on and going, okay, close enough, before just calling it a day. So yeah, good job. Here they actually appreciate the nuances of actual tattoos. Like with a lot of these, does it change the game? No. Is it cool? Yeah. Now next at number 9, Just Cause has always let you do some real buck wild stuff. It's kind of the series trademark at this point. Just Cause 4 continues to up the ante by bringing in some things like balloons and all sorts of staged activation for all your tethers and whatnot. This has led to some truly wild videos and GIFs coming out of the game. Like, for example, check this one out. This is a different type of detail, but apparently you can be near a rocket or missile launcher turret, and just as the rockets take flight, the rockets that seem like they're kind of just scenery, you can actually launch your tether onto it and then take a ride. It's not easy to pull off, but it's really cool, and the fact that the developers thought about someone thinking of putting their tether on it and actually programming it to be usable is awesome. I don't know what else to say other than that. This is just an amazing display of weird physics, and we're into it. But next at number 8, the Destiny series is chock full of weird and interesting little details, but one of our absolute favorites has to do with the game's hand cannons. If you're playing with a controller, sorry keyboard and mouse players, the trigger mechanism is actually pressure sensitive. So when you slowly press the trigger button, the on-screen hammer mechanism will cock back accordingly, and the gun's barrel will roll to bring the next chamber into alignment with the hammer. That's really cool. We don't know the technical ins and outs of every single gun. We've gotten the facts wrong sometimes, but something that cool with the way it's animated and with the way it's programmed to the controller is something that can be really overlooked in the heat of the moment when you're just running and shooting. But it's a super cool detail that might get overlooked by a lot of players. So next time you're out there shooting the Hive in their dome piece, take a second to just give it a try. It's really cool. But next at number 7, despite the power and tech involved in current console and PC games, it's still more common to just have mirrors be kind of crappy in games. A lot of the times they're just there and they don't even really reflect anything. And when they do have real-time reflections, it's generally just a cosmetic thing there for us, the players. Hitman 2, though, that game takes mirrors seriously. Not only are the real-time reflections really, really good, they're also integrated into the game and the AI react to them. If an NPC is looking in the mirror in a bathroom where you're not supposed to be, or you're sneaking up behind them to kill them, they'll react to it. And sometimes you need to do something to fog or distort the mirrors. I don't know, it's just really awesome to see the time and effort that IO took to make the mirrors in Hitman not only look good, but also function like real mirrors. And it does add another level of detail, not only visually, but also just to the game itself. You should play the Hitman series if you haven't, because they're awesome. Moving over to number 6, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is like a gigantic game with a ton of island to visit, a ton of stuff to discover, and everything is separated by giant bodies of water. Cities look great and have that hustle and bustle and that lived-in feeling, and the same can be said about the smaller villages as well. And the fact that the game has side missions that actually seem to matter and are all different from one another also helps to set that small attention to detail in the big open living world. But did you know that the sea shanties that your crew sings when you're exploring the open seas are actually real Greek poems? According to some cool reporting done by Luke Plunkett at Kotaku, we learned that Ubisoft actually worked with historians to make sure that these shanties were as authentic as possible. Of course, they've done stuff like that before with the pirate shanties from the previous Assassin's Creed games, but to go further back in time just makes it more impressive. They're obviously cut up poems and not word for word, but they stayed very true to the original text. And we gotta give them props for that. That's awesome. And at number 5, Super Smash Bros. Games are detailed, but Smash Ultimate took it to a clever level we just really appreciate it. Basically, if a character can't swim in their own video game they came from, they have trouble with water in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So like Incineroar or Charizard, because they're fire types who can't swim, and Sonic the Hedgehog because in the old Sonic games, he couldn't swim. Same with the Inklings from the Splatoon games, because in the Splatoon games, they don't like water. In Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they all have their own little struggling animation when they're in the water, and they can't can't tread water like the other characters normally can do for a few seconds. They not only struggle, but they also take 1% damage while they're doing so, because they're keeping their abilities and what they can do canon within Ultimate, and you know what? That's a super nice little touch. But next up at number 4, we have Dead Cells. Dead Cells' little bit of attention to detail actually has nothing to do with graphics or art direction, but instead has something to do within its menus. The game actually allows you to go into the menus and change what your health drops look like. For example, if you're a vegetarian and you're not into your health drops being a piece of meat, you can set it to drop vegetables, fruits, or you can even choose the baguette option. Seeing that you can't just eat carbs in real life, now you can live out that fantasy in a video game and just munch on bread. But yeah, this is really cool. I played Dead Cells for hours and hours and hours and didn't even notice this. Because, games are all about immersion, and I've always wondered how vegetarians felt about their character eating meat in video games. And, seeing that they don't eat meat in real life, I feel like that could work towards breaking the immersion. But they actually thought about it here. I don't know, I just thought this was really interesting and also really cool of the developers to include. But coming down to number 3, you may have heard this before, but Insomniac's SpiderMan is really great. The way it controls the story, the way it looks, Insomniac did a really great job of making a believable New York City that actually felt lived in. But one thing in particular that stuck out to a lot of players was the look of the building interiors. It looked like the inside of each building was actually specifically designed to look the way it does. It actually uses a really cool interior mapping technique, and technically, it's all a shader technique that not only makes it in games look really, really good and detailed, but also saves a lot of time for people building the buildings in the game. Of course, it isn't totally perfect. There was that video circulating online when the game released where the player was on the corner of a building looking in the window, and then when they went around the corner to the next window, the interior didn't exactly match up. But besides that little hiccup, it's impressive how well this technique worked for Insomniac. The fact that you are Spider-Man and you can look through a window in a building and see stuff, not like just an old crappy low-res JPEG, like an actual interior, that's impressive. But now at number 2, let's talk about Battlefield 5. The game has gotten a lot of flack for a lot of things, but I've said it before, and I'll say it again, there's no denying its maps look absolutely incredible. Especially the snow maps like Narvik and Fjell 652. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But they're good demonstrators of not only like the widespread destruction of buildings you can cause in the game, but also the snow deformation. Like large explosions from a nearby bomb drop from like an airplane or mortar blasts or just your own personal explosives can shake and unsettle the foot of snow or more that's built up on a rooftop, causing the large chunks of snow to slide off the roof and break apart. Just think of how crazy that is in terms of, number 1, yeah, it looks really realistic and cool, but 2, also, it's running in a game that has a lot of other graphical things going on. It's managing 64 players online. It's managing bullet ballistics and other building destruction and vehicles and people in the air. And yet the game still finds time to make the snow falling off of a roof look realistic. It doesn't sound like much, but if you live somewhere where it snows, you probably get it. Damn. It does look amazing. Like with wood splintering and smoke and concrete everywhere, realistic snow chunks falling apart just kind of add icing to the graphical destruction cake. That's not a real cake, I just made that up. I'm tired, sorry. Now finally, at number 1, we had to acknowledge this. We gotta talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, which has an insane amount of attention to detail. There's so much. Corpses, human and animal, decay over time, light will shine through your ears, and parts of cartilage will look distinctly realistic. Your face will get bruised and bloodied after getting into a fight. Animal carcasses on your shoulder will leave blood. You get dirty. Like I said, there's so much detail here, but we can't make a video like this talking about little details and not mention the horse balls. I mean, come on, the horse testicles. Look at these things. They're hyper realistic, and apparently, according to the developers, they do react to the weather. It does seem really slight, but still, the attention to detail, the fact that somebody fully modeled these things. Kudos to the person or persons that were in charge of detailing the horses, and specifically their testicles, or bollocks, or whatever you want to call them wherever you're from. Sorry. Now, just as a bonus, we got one more for you. Let's talk about a little thing in God of War. It was really awesome, as you know, but you spend a lot of time on a boat in this game. When you're rowing around in the lake doing your thing, when Mimir wants to talk to you about random stuff like frost giants or whatever, if you stop paddling and Kratos does the thing where he just rests the oar on his lap, if you look closely at the end of the oar, you can actually see drops of the residual water dripping off of the oar and then visibly splashing down onto the water below. Sony Santa Monica put a lot of detail into so much of this game, and you know what? It shows. We're glad as hell. And you can say the same thing about everything on this list. The amount of detail in these games, we really appreciate. So of course, we want to hear from you guys in the comments. If you're playing a game and there's a little tiny bit of detail, whether it's a gameplay element or graphics or what have you, we want to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video though, and maybe learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and we really appreciate it. But it's worth saying, if you're new, you should consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell, because we put out a video every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.